This is lecture number 8 in our long course, not long, but a short course of 8 lectures, where we discuss how to do open source software development. And not only how to do it, but how to do it effectively so that you become popular, so that you become visible, so that you become more expensive software engineer who more companies would love to hire. That's the ultimate goal. And I keep repeating that before every lecture. Open source should not be only for fun. It should be primarily in order to help you to get a better job, to get a better project, to get a better investor, to get a better marketplace, to get a better customer base. And in this last lecture, we're gonna discuss what's the most important, how to become popular, how to make your projects visible, how to make them popular in open source domain, specifically on GitHub, because GitHub is the #1 place where people keep their open source projects, and we discuss how to be there popular. And before we start, I will make a quick recap of our previous 7 lectures. We actually discussed in all these 7 lectures how to help you to be more popular. Let's start with the first one. On the first lecture, we discussed about, we talked about the way people talk in GitHub conversations. And I told you that this territory is very toxic and that you must be prepared for kind of special way of having a conversation there. This is not exactly what you have in the office. This is not exactly how you communicate with your friends and your colleagues in the same building where you go every day to spend 8 hours a day there. It's a different story in open source because people don't know each other, and very often people don't respect each other, unfortunately. And very often people are quite prejudiced about your personality, about your profile, about who you are. We discussed all of that. And I gave you a recipe at the first lecture. I told you that the best way to handle all this and to be nice, to be respectful, to be tolerant, to be patient, and use these 3 words: please, thanks, and sorry. With these 3 words, you can open any door, specifically the door which is the open source door, which is closed for you when you just start making your first open source projects, and you hope that people will love it, people will use it, people will contribute to it. Use these 3 words: be nice. Lecture 2, we discussed that you should be prepared for bug reports. You must enjoy getting them. Software development is not only about writing code, it's also about getting the feedback from users, and sometimes these users are programmers, and you must be prepared for this negativity which is coming from them in form of bug reports. The more bug reports you're getting, the better for you. The more needed is your product, the more interesting it is for the customers, the more contribution they are ready to make to your project in form of bug reports. You should understand bug reports as contribution to your product, as well as the code people might sometimes contribute to you. Bug reports is just yet another mechanism of helping you to make your product better. You must expect them, those bug reports, and you must enjoy them. If your product doesn't have bug reports or the number of them is small, then there is a problem. You should not be so happy about this situation. You should worry. On the other hand, if you're getting many bug reports, this is the perfect situation for you. Reply to them, fix them, enjoy them. That's the lesson number 2 we learned on the second lecture. On the third lecture, we talked about making pull requests to other repositories. And I told you many times there that in most cases, we do that in order to boost your profile. Of course, we do it in a constructive way, so we need to something to be fixed there. We need some changes to be made in other repositories. Because of that, we make changes. But look at this from another perspective. If you really want these changes to be made, you would just fork that repository, make it your repository, make the changes quickly, and then release it to your own server and just use it. This is what people do very often when they don't care about their popularity in GitHub. They don't care about who they are. They don't care about their profile. They just care about short-term results to get now. If this is the case, they just fork what they have, make the changes, release it locally, and forget about the authorship of this stuff because they don't care any longer. They have a local copy. You don't do that. When you have a chance to contribute to somebody, think about your reputation, which will grow after each pull request you make. Your profile will grow. Your GitHub face will become more and more professional. In order to get that face, in order to get that representation on GitHub, you must think about contributing to other repositories. And of course, you should try to do it as effectively as possible. And on lecture 3, we discussed exactly that, how to make it more effective so that your pull requests will not be rejected very often, but some of them will be accepted. Even though I told you that only 1 out of 3 pull requests are being accepted in general in active and large open source repositories. That's why don't expect your pull requests to be always accepted. Be prepared for rejections. Be prepared for resentment coming from those code owners who may not enjoy merging your stuff just because you submitted. But keep doing that. Keep making pull requests. On the lecture 4, we discussed how to accept pull requests and how to prevent chaos in your repository by doing professional code review. If you don't review what's coming, if you just accept whatever they submit, you can imagine what's going to happen with your repository very soon. Instead of doing that, you have to carefully review the pull requests which are coming, but at the same time, remember that if you're being too strict, if you're being too unpredictable, then people may walk away from your repository because they may lose their enthusiasm and may decide that there is zero chance in this repository to actually get something in. You don't want that to happen. You want your repositories to be accepting changes, accepting them and enjoying the growth of contributorship. Let's call it this way. The more contributors you have, the more forks you have, the more popular is your repository, the more free power you have, which is helping you to grow as a software developer. The lesson number 5, which we learned on the lecture number 5, is that you have to make your README file look nice. And not just visually nice, not just syntactically correct, but there are many specific recommendations which were given on this lecture, and you should pay attention to them. The better you represent your repository, the more attractive it looks, the bigger will be the popularity of it. The more people will join it, the more they will contribute. And of course, we discussed the licenseship, the license which you have to choose for your repository, again, in order to make it more attractive to your friends, to your contributors who will bring their code to you. I suggested to use MIT license because it is the most free, it is the most popular right now on the market, and it's the least obligatory to the people who use your code. We will discuss a little bit today as well about all of these points, and we will touch the README subject as well. Now just remember that in the lecture 5 we discussed a lot about this topic, and README file is an important entrance door to your repository. When they come to you, they don't know who you are, they don't know your intentions, they don't know what's the past of this repository, they don't know what is the past of you, they know nothing. They just look at the README file and they pay attention to the number of stars, maybe, how many stars are there, how many forks are there. And then they make a decision to stay with you or not to stay with you. If you catch their attention, which is usually with you for a few seconds, I don't have the research data which can prove that intuition, but my intuition tells me that I literally have a few seconds, sometimes I have maybe a few minutes if I'm really interested in the repository, to decide whether to stay with it or to walk away. And I look at sometimes dozens of repositories every day and I make dozens of decisions. Is it an interesting repository? Does it deserve my star? Do I give a star to this repository, or I just walk away and try something else? On the lesson number 6, we discussed that you have to configure GitHub Actions jobs. You have to configure CI/CD. So you have to configure continuous integration. You must integrate the code which is in the repository. If you don't integrate it, if it's just a collection of files, no matter how beautiful those files are, no matter how important is this repository for the humanity, it doesn't really matter if there is no integration of these files into something single, into something solid, which is a single file, a single package, a single product. And this integration must involve a number of quality checking steps. If you have all of that, then people trust your repository. People understand that you care about the quality. You care about how this code looks and how it's being maintained and how long it's going to live. If you care, I will care as well. But if you just have a collection of files which you put there and only you understand how they work, then I'm not going to care as well. I will also have the same attitude. I will understand that this is some temporary, maybe even garbage, we can call it this way, which may eventually will be deleted and removed, and the whole repository may not even survive another 100 pull requests. So you must demonstrate to your users that you care. And the best way to do it, or one of the best ways to do it, is by automating the integration of your files together and doing it with extreme attention to quality control. Not just compile your C++ files and call it a day and decide that that's enough. If the whole code compiles, then integration is done. Not really. The code must be statically checked. The code must be validated. The code must be unit tested. The integration must not only check the C++ files, but maybe also Markdown files, like I showed you on the lecture number 6. Or maybe you can even check YAML files. So all the different files you can put together, all the different checks you can put together in order to demonstrate to people that you care. All of these lectures, all of these suggestions, which I'm summarizing right now, they're all in the same, they're all pointing to the same direction: how to attract contributors, how to get these people who will work for free for you, who will use your product, and what's more important, who will give you those stars and who will become your active developers. So in the lecture number 7, we discussed that you have to make frequent semantic version releases. If you do them, then it's also a great demonstration to your customer base or contributor base that you are interested in a stable pipeline of delivery of your product to your users. And that's probably the best indicator of your intention to stay with this product for longer and to continue being there no matter what. No matter what kind of problems will be there, no matter what kind of difficulties you're going to face, no matter what's going to be the challenges, you are interested to keep releasing this product incrementally, frequently, in a stable way. Do it. So this is the recap. That's what I suggest to pay attention to. If you do it this way, you're gonna get what you deserve. Of course, what you develop matters. So if you develop something useful, then definitely people will pay more attention to what you do. If you develop something useless, something which nobody really needs, then it's gonna be less attention to you. But I've seen many repositories and many GitHub users who actually develop something interesting. They develop something useful, but they don't pay attention to these 7 things which we just discussed. They just don't care about all that. They just believe that GitHub is just a storage of files. That GitHub is the same as a Google Drive. You just put files there and, well, yeah, maybe somebody will pay attention, but that's not what I can control. It's out of my control. I don't care. I just hold my stuff there and I keep working on it. With this attitude, you're gonna get 0 or very small visibility, and in the end, you're gonna get a lot of frustration because people don't pay attention to what you do, and then eventually you will lose the momentum. You will lose the fun, the pleasure of being in open source. If nobody needs what you do, what's the motivation to do it? Even for me, if I make some repository and I put stuff there and I get 1, 2, maybe 3 stars in the next month, I understand that nobody needs that and I just stop working on it. Even though I know what is open source, I know that eventually the attention may come, so I have some sort of resilience towards this ignorance from the audience, but it still hurts me. I can imagine how it will hurt somebody who has a few repositories right now and just almost close to 0 experience. So in order not to get this frustration, pay attention. Even if you make a pet project, even if you make your diploma work, your course project, try to play with it in the right way. Try to organize it beautifully. Try to make it very representative, very attractive to potential contributors, and see what happens. And I guarantee you that people will come. And now we will see the studies. Now we will see what the science is telling us about that, and they will confirm what I'm saying now, coming from my intuition. Let's take a look. The first study I'm showing you is that they say they try to predict the popularity of GitHub. And the popularity, which we will discuss today, is all about the number of stars. This is the number 1 metric which some people argue against. Some people say that number of stars is not a very objective metric and there are other indicators. I don't buy that. I believe in stars. I believe that the more stars repository has, the more popularity is there. Not always the repository contains something useful. It could be just a collection of Java samples. Just samples of Java code, which is interesting for somebody, but not interesting for me. It happens. Sometimes it may be a repository with some awesome list of tools which help you to, to edit your markdown files. And it may have 20,000 stars. For me, it's not important because I don't, for example, need this list right now, but still, 20,000 stars is an indicator of a response from users. People actually were interested. People said, oh, that's something that I might look into the future, or this is something that I need right now, but there was a reaction. So, number 1 metric is number of stars. And in this study, they suggested that if we look at the previous results of what happened before with the repository, we can predict how many stars it's going to get in the future. I'll show you some interesting statistics from this paper. Look at this. They got a number of repositories, open source repositories, some of them you may know, and they looking at their past, at their last 6 months of how people were actually liking them, how people were giving them stars. They predicted, they predicted this. They predicted how many more stars they're gonna get in the next 6 months. And then there was the actual result. And this is the difference. So how much inaccuracy we have in this prediction mechanism. You see that it's not very far from the truth. So the mistake, the error, is not larger than 15%, which is quite reasonable. What does it tell us? Why I'm showing you this? It tells us that these mechanisms of getting the popularity, of getting the likelihood, of getting the star base, of getting stars, is actually something that you can predict. If you do everything the right way, you're gonna get what you deserve. In this paper, they identified 5 different patterns, 5 different growth trends, they call it, the trajectories which happen. So sometimes you see this is how the repository popularity grow, or sometimes you see this pattern of stars growing. And they say that this is the number of repositories which belong to these growth patterns. Which one is going to be you? Is it going to be this one or is it going to be that one? It's up to a number of factors. But the bottom line is that you will be in one of those clusters. You will follow the trend, which is quite predictable. So this paper is helping us to believe that you can control the popularity that is coming to your repository. It's not just luck. It's not pure randomness. It's not just something that happens overnight, even though sometimes it does. Sometimes you get a boost of popularity overnight. Sometimes you may post your repository to Hacker News or to Twitter and then just wake up tomorrow morning and get extra 100 stars. It happened to me a few times. I know how it works. Just sometimes even 200 stars overnight. But it just happened to me maybe 2 or 3 times in a 12 or 15. How old is GitHub? That's how old I stay with GitHub. So it's maybe like, I don't know, 10 years, more than 10 years. So in a course of 10 years, it just happened to me 3 times. Don't expect that. Expect a normal, predictable trajectory of growth. Now the question is how to get this trajectory, how to affect it. I already mentioned 7 instruments, but let's see what else we can do. And this is an interesting study which tells us that people, developers, they do care about the number of stars in the repository. This is what I told you just a few minutes ago. But this study confirms my intuition. They asked, I think, 700 or something, a few hundred people, a few hundred developers, whether they care about this metric, about this number of stars, or it's not important for them. And the answer was yes, we do care. When we decide which repository to work with, which repository to use, which software product to take, we pay attention to how many stars are there. I do. 3 out of 4 developers say, yes, we do care about the number of stars. That's the answer for you. Do you need to fight for these stars? Yes, you do need to fight for them, because that's the metric which most people pay attention to. Everything else is secondary, in my opinion, for the developers. Secondary. It's not nothing. It's not just, it doesn't mean that we only look at this number of stars and then we don't read the README file, we don't care about the license, we don't care about the functionality. No, but first of all, we pay attention to the stars. If a repository has 20 stars, it's going to be one attitude. If the repository has 1,000 stars, it's a completely different attitude. For me, and for other developers as well. So, because of that, pay attention to how many stars you have. Don't ignore this number, that's for sure. Another paper, which is also in the same direction. They made a bit deeper analysis, in my opinion, and they found that popularity of the project, popularity in terms of stars. So the number of stars, that's number one indicator. The time to review pull requests, this is metric number 2. Then project age, metric number 3. And programming languages, this is metric number 4. They are the factors that explain newcomers' growth patterns. People pay attention to these 4 parameters of your repository when they decide join in or walk away. And the number of stars stays at the first position. Now, these guys actually published a longer list of this parameters, and we can look at it. They did the ranking, and in this case, they didn't ask people. They did the analysis of these parameters using the statistical methods. They took the number of the amount of contribution, as far as I understand, and they compared or tried to find the correlation between these factors. You can see that the number of stars is at the highest position. It gives the largest influence on the decisions made by programmers whether to contribute or not. And then everything else goes down. And what's interesting, look at what they're saying, and that's the quote from them. They say GitHub recommended community standards have a lower influence on these observed patterns. So it doesn't matter for programmers what are the rules and community standards, like code of conduct. They're talking about this. Whether the code of conduct is present in the repository or not. If you remember, I think the first lecture in this course, we touched that subject. We discussed that people in general in the community don't care much about codes of conduct, even though this thing is being actively promoted by GitHub, is being pushed by GitHub to developers, but looks like developers don't care. What developers care is the number of stars. If other people like this, I'm going to use it. If other people don't like it, I don't care about your code of conduct. I don't care about your license, as you can see here. I don't care about whether you have wiki or you have the contributing template. I care about this stuff. Number of stars, time to merge. What is interesting, if you merge pull requests faster, then people are gonna submit them more. And we also touched that subject, I believe, in the lecture where we discussed pull requests and how to review them. I showed you some studies which confirm that the faster you merge, the more people bring in. You have to pay attention to how fast you merge. You have to wake up in the middle of the night if your repository is being very active and review the code people submit to you from different time zones and try to merge as soon as possible. In order to keep them inside your repository, in order to keep them away from the decision to take your code, fork it, and call it their own code, which people do very often if they don't get the response from the main repository. Well, it happens to me. If I find a repository and I make a fork, I make a pull request through the fork to the original repository, and I wait for the response, and I need that product, I need the changes to be made, and there is no answer from there for 1 day, for 2 days, for 3 days, what do? I call this fork the main repository, and I try to package this stuff, release it somewhere, and I never get back to the original repository because I already diverged from the main development branch. You don't want this to happen with the people who come to you and want to contribute. That's why you need to very frequently reply to their pull requests and either reject or accept, but do something. Don't keep them waiting for too long. Here, number of languages. I believe the correlation, the line number 3 talks about how many languages are there, and the more, I think, the better, or something like that. But I'm not sure about this line. You can read the paper, and that will help you understand what exactly they mean here. And the same for the age. So is it better if the repository is older, or it's better if the repository is younger? I'm not sure. And I don't really find these lines very interesting. I'm interested in these two, or maybe even the first one, the popularity and the number of stars. You may wonder how to get those stars, right? I'm saying that they are important, but your question may be, okay, what do I do to get them? Go back to the first slide in today's lecture. I summarized 7 things which may help you get those stars. You cannot buy them. You cannot get them in some stars shop online, because they're real people. They're actual programmers, and they give you the star if they really like what you do. So the only way to attract them is to make things good. But a few mechanisms I will suggest today as well, on top of these 7 recommendations. And they are more about marketing, more about something which is not related to coding. So these recommendations, as usual, I'm going to give you, I think, 6 or 7 today. Recommendation number 1, put some badges. You know, these badges which stay on your README page. Apparently, they help. And look at the repository which we develop right now actively. We have our README page looking like this. We have some logo here, then we have 3 badges which are pure promotional badges, we just recommend something to our users, and then we have badges which are automatically generated. So all of them, they show something interesting about the repository. Here we show our code coverage, which we automatically collect. Here we show the status of our build continuous integration system. Here we show the number of the amount of technical debt in our repository, which is being automatically collected. Here we show the latest version, which was released to Maven Central. Here we have the hits of code. So how many hits of code in our repository? Here, how many lines of code in our repository? All these badges, they're being actively generated, and apparently they help customers, other developers, to understand whether we are trustable or not, whether this repository is being actively maintained or it's abandoned. And this is not just my intuition, there is a study about that. The study says that majority of reviewers who these scientists asked, these people, programmers, they agree that with the statement, I consider the presence of badges in general to be an indicator of project quality. So most programmers in open source, in GitHub, and this study is 5 years old, most people really look at those badges. They pay attention to them. And if you have them, they believe that the repository is of high quality. If you don't have them, they have concerns. So what do? You put the badges. You think about them, which one are the most reasonable to put there, which one will definitely present something which is automatically generated in the repository, and which of them may not fit into repository. Because not every badge is a good candidate for the repository. And what's interesting, in the same paper, they show this graph. They show this graph where you can see on a horizontal line the number of badges, and then vertically the number of downloads. And they analyzed only NPM software, if I'm not mistaken. Yes, it's about NPM ecosystem. So the number of downloads means popularity. You can see that at some moment, and this is number 5, so when you have 5 badges, you're going to get the peak download level. Of course, it's quite how to say, not so accurate, I would say, because definitely this number, this correlation I wouldn't call it applicable to all situations, and definitely we cannot say that by placing exactly 5 badges in your repository, you're going to get the maximum number of downloads. Definitely not. We may not conclude this way, but we can definitely conclude that if we take thousands of repositories and compare them, the number of badges in them with the number of downloads, we're going to get approximately this graph. And definitely you don't want to be here. Definitely you don't want to put 12 badges there. Because of this, after seeing this graph, I think we kind of making maybe a little bit of a mistake here, because we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Well, exactly 12. Maybe it is a mistake. Well, keeping in mind the findings of this study. But so for you, I do not recommend to have 12 badges. For us, maybe it's okay because we do love all of those badges and we believe that each of them stays there for a good reason. We don't want to get rid of them. We want to be with all of them. When you start a repository, think twice. Maybe you don't need 12. Maybe 5 is the very good number, but definitely not 0. If you have 0 badges, you kind of go against the preferences of programmers on the market. Programmers tell you, we do love those badges. They tell us that the repository is being of a high quality. I would say not high quality. That's my personal correction on this paper conclusion. I would say not quality, but maintenance mode. When I see the badges and all of those badges are automatically generated, I understand that the repository is healthy. The repository is currently active. Because all of the badges, they are generated when people push something to the repository. When I see that they pushed just recently, and I see that all the badges are not red, that all of the pages are not gray, they're all green, on the majority of them is green, then I know that repository is alive. And if it's alive, then I want to use it and I want to contribute to it. You see, the effect for less popular packages is negligible. They are talking here about large repositories. So the numbers of downloads here are quite large. I don't think your NPM packages will be downloadable hundreds of thousands of times in the beginning. Initially, you're going to get less user base. Initially, your stuff will be downloaded less, but that's okay. Just keep in mind how big repositories, how popular repositories use badges in order to demonstrate health, in order to demonstrate the stability of their code base. Recommendation number 2, keep the momentum. I call it this way, keep the momentum. And I'll explain right now what it means by using this paper. This study, which is in 2016, they're saying that that a repository receives more stars right after their first public release. When we first publish our stuff, when we do the release first, then people join and give us stars. And then, after that period, for half of the repositories which they analyzed, the growth rate tends to stabilize. It is reasonable. People like new stuff. They feel more encouraged, they feel more motivated to give you a star when they see that they help you. That's my perception. Maybe some other people have their different motivation. But when I see a repository and I see that there are only 50 stars right now and they just released recently, I enjoy giving an extra star there because my star is going to be 51st star, which matters. But if I open the repository where there are 5,000 stars already, then my extra star doesn't matter that much. So I'm going to give it if I really enjoy the repository. But I don't feel that I'm doing something good for somebody because my action is not visible. My action is not as important as my action when I give the 51st star. Maybe this is what they're talking about, but maybe not. Maybe there are some other psychological factors which drive the behavior of these people, of programmers who give their stars, who give their appreciation in the beginning of a life cycle of the repository. For you, I recommend to keep it in mind. Just remember, this is what happens. When you go first, when you open your repository, when you start, pay extra attention to how you represent your code, how you make your README file look. There will be no other second chance. You will have no second chance. You will get it either now or you will get it never. In the beginning, you get the majority, the biggest reaction. Be careful with this. The first step matters. And also this, which is interesting, it's kind of, it's related to the recommendation about keeping the momentum, but maybe not directly. Let's see what they say. They say that there is a notable sizable group of people who follow others on GitHub and tweet about these people's work, but don't otherwise contribute to those open source projects. This is true. I've seen those people. I've seen those tweet reactions of people who are not writing code for my repositories, but they tweet about these repositories. And it helps a lot. It helps a lot me. If I'm the developer of a repository and somebody tweets about my code, then of course, people join, people come, people give me stars, I get the popularity. But the people who tweeted, people who wrote about me, they didn't submit any pull requests. They didn't contribute anyhow. All they did, they just tweeted or wrote a blog post or posted a link on Reddit, on Hacker News. We're gonna discuss these platforms in a minute. You need to care about those people. Why I'm telling you about them? Because you need to know that they exist, and if you care about them, they will care about you, something like that. Expect people to be on these social platforms very popular. These people might be very socially active, writing very small amount of code for you or maybe for anybody, but very active about learning new stuff, about finding repositories. Be ready to get their attention, to catch their attention. How to catch their attention? I don't know. I cannot give you any particular advice here, but you need to just remember that this is what happens in open source world. Next recommendation, keep it up. So as soon as you get the popularity boost in the beginning, you publish your repository, you get some initial stars, people come to you, people give you, they like you, they give you 10 stars, they give you 20 stars, you're very glad, you're happy, keep it up. So continue keeping your repository alive. This is what the study says. They say that it appears that vitality has a significant effect on popularity over time, indicating that the more active a project is in terms of posting new releases and making announcements, the more attention it receives from the community. The study is very old, but I believe it is relevant to what's happening right now. I would not say now that we should talk only about new releases and announcements, because this is what was happening in open source world 25 years ago, 23 years ago, the releases, the announcements. Now we have more interesting actions. For example, we have commits, we have pull requests, we have issues, we have things which happen in the repository. If they happen, people will come and the popularity will grow. If your repository stays put, no matter how beautiful it is, no matter how interesting is the product, people are not going to give you stars, people are not going to give you contribution. You have to work actively with the repository. Vitality, that's the key word. It should be vital. It should be alive. And if it's alive, it makes changes. If it makes changes, it is alive. Your job is to make changes. Sometimes it's not easy when the repository is stable, when you just have something done and that's it. Make a schedule for you. Just make a calendar and come back to this repository every few months, maybe every few weeks, and just update, look at the README file, clean it up a little bit, maybe make some implementation, some improvement with this code, with that code. It will help. It will help to demonstrate to the community that this is a live repository. And also demonstrate to GitHub. GitHub is like a Google now. GitHub is like a large search engine, which redirect people, reroute people to the right place. They come to GitHub and they start searching. Give me a software product which helps me to encrypt a binary file in JavaScript. The GitHub gives the answer. Not Google anymore, but GitHub. GitHub decides what is popular, what is not popular, which one should be recommended. How do you think GitHub decides? Of course, number of stars is the number one indicator, but there are other factors they take into account as well. If the project is actively being developed, they even may put your project into so-called GitHub trends, the repository which are trending. The trending, trends or trending? I think it's trending. It's trending. So that's the list of repositories which are being actively developed now, and they receive popularity actively. If you get into GitHub trending, you're gonna get 100 stars in a day, that's for sure. There are many articles in Google, there are many blog posts, people explaining how they get in there, how they were happy because they were chosen to be there. Because I think it's being manually selected. It's not only the algorithms work there. I think there are some human beings sitting inside GitHub and deciding which repository goes in, which repository, no matter how stars it receives, it doesn't go into GitHub trending. And if you get there, you will get super popular and you will get a lot of success. How to get there? Make your repository vital, make it actively being changed, make it disciplined, make it organized well, make it well documented. Pay attention to how you represent it to other people, and GitHub will pay off eventually. Or maybe not. But at least you will get some fun of maintaining your repository the right way. But that's your goal, definitely. That is your objective number one. If you are serious about open source development, your repository may get into this list, may stay there for a few days, maybe for a few weeks, and during this time, you will get hundreds and hundreds of stars. I never been there, to my knowledge. Maybe I was, but I didn't pay attention because they're not gonna email you about that. You're not gonna get a notification about that, to my knowledge. Maybe something has changed now, but the last time I checked, there was no notification from GitHub. They just put you there and you enjoy getting stars every few minutes, just your popularity starts growing. Maybe I was there because I'm telling you that sometimes I've seen situations when my repository was growing for 200 stars overnight. You just go to sleep and you have 200 stars and you wake up, you have 400 stars. You get super happy, you don't know what happened, you start searching, you start looking into different forums, and then you find that, oh, that was the post on Reddit, and that post was upvoted 100 times, and that's why they came to GitHub, and maybe GitHub put me on trending. I didn't check. Now I know that this GitHub trending is an important place. You should be aiming for it. If you get there, you will be super successful, super lucky. Make some noise. That's my recommendation number 4. Recommendation number 1 was to put the badges. Recommendation number 2 was keep the momentum when you release. Be prepared for the first step in the lifetime of the repository. Recommendation number 3, keep it up. So properly maintain the repository. And recommendation number 4, make some noise. So make your repository visible. Where? I'll show you a number of places where you can make the noise. Place number 1, Reddit. You go to Reddit, you find the right so-called subreddit, and you put there an announcement about your release. If you do it first time for your repository, nobody gonna blame you, nobody gonna block you if you do it just once. Of course, if you're gonna post the message about your repository every week, the same repository with the same message, they will quickly, they will ban you and they will remove your advertisement. But if you do it carefully, and by carefully I mean care about the community, give them something which they may enjoy reading. Nobody gonna enjoy reading the same stuff as they read 2 weeks ago. But if you do something new, if you create something different in your library, then everybody will enjoy knowing that you released something different, something important. Reddit is, as they say, the door, the gateway to the internet, and very popular for software development community. Programmers actually read Reddit. I don't know why, but I do post there sometimes when I release something, when I publish something, then I try to find the right subreddit, post my link there, and some traffic is coming from there. If you're serious about open source, you absolutely must be there, create an account, find the right subreddit. Maybe it's Java, maybe JavaScript, maybe there's a subreddit called /programming. This is very large group of thousands or tens or hundreds of thousands of people. If you post there, and if it gets upvotes and you get to the first page, you will get also maybe 100 stars overnight. Second place is Hacker News. Hacker News, if you don't know the link, you can see on the slides, on the slide deck, just Google for it. Hacker News is the place where people post different links about everything, sometimes about politics, sometimes about programming, sometimes about technologies, sometimes about open source. You just go there, you post your link, it's free, no registration. Yeah, you need to be registered there, but that's just a few clicks, easy. You post the news. If it is interesting, people start upvoting your post, and it gets up and up. If you get to the first page, you will get definitely 100 stars overnight if you stay on the first page. It happened to me, I think 3 or 4 times with my repository. But you can post there again, so they're not gonna ban you. That's what's the difference between Reddit and Hacker News. Hacker News don't ban your links. They just accept it, but they just don't get up. So they don't block your account, they just accept whatever you submit. But if the link is not interesting, maybe they have some robots inside which understand that that's a duplication, they will just not show it again on the first page. You will get nothing. You will just waste your time on reposting your stuff. So be careful, post it when it's ready. Post it when it has interesting information. When your project is interesting for the community, then at that point of time, you post it. DZone. DZone is the place for writing articles. It's like a developer zone. That's a very old website, maybe 20 or 25 years old, where people were posting articles about programming. If you don't have your own blog, you have no place to post your stuff, you can go to DZone, create an account, write an article there, and edit it properly, send it for review. It's reviewed, so it's not automatically. Somebody will check your article, some editor, they will read it, maybe they will accept it, maybe they will return it to you and suggest some improvements, but usually they accept if you read it, if you write it properly. In most cases, they accept. Well, in my story is that they accept, and the story of people who I work with, we submitted there a number of articles last year, just a few months ago, and they accepted, and they also have like a first page. So they may put you on the first page, they may highlight your story, which will give you, again, quite a lot of popularity, a lot of stars, because people will see that you're interesting. Some people just start their workday from these places. And you should too. That's I recommend you to do. If you are a software developer, then you have to have these 3 websites definitely on your bookmarks, and you check them time to time, because they post the most current, the most interesting, the most community reviewed content, which is way better than you can get on Twitter, on social networks, on Facebook, on everywhere. Because here we're talking about developers, the people who are technical. They review this stuff, and if the stuff is not worth of paying attention to, they just downvote it and you never see it, which is not the case for Instagram or Facebook or Twitter. Because on Twitter, you cannot guarantee that there are programmers there, and there's no as much review, I believe. No algorithms to prevent you from seeing the stuff which is not interesting. So these 3 places are good platforms for you to be there as a developer and as a reader as well. Every time you think about making an open source project, making a new repository, making a new library, a new framework, a new something, format it correctly, organize it properly, make a proper README file, everything we discussed on the previous lectures, and then go to these 3 platforms, make your accounts, and present it there to the community. I will guarantee you, if you do it right, if you do it carefully, if you do it in a nice way, I'm not saying right way, because there is no right way, but if you do it with your attention to details, then I can guarantee you that the reaction will come. The community will come back to you. And you will get, in the worst case, if you publish your stuff at the same time to Reddit, to Hacker News, and to DZone about your new product, and you do it the same day, I can guarantee you will get 20 stars for sure. 20 minimum. If the community will really like it, then you're going to get 100 or something. But 20 is piece of cake. They will give it to you. That's the mechanism. That's how you get stars. That's what you need, right? You need stars in order to be popular. That's the door. Just open it. Another instruments, let's see them. Stack Overflow. Stack Overflow, that's the platform all of you know. That's the place where programmers are looking for answers for their technical questions. If you create something, if you make a new open source project, ideally you're solving someone's problem. Somebody is not happy with what is happening now in the software world. You are providing a solution. That's why you make a product. If you don't provide a solution to any problem, then I don't know why you're making a product. You always have to identify a problem. We talked about this when we discussed how to formulate your README file. In the README file, you have to start your README file with saying, there is a problem, something doesn't work. And here is me helping you, solving your problem. These people definitely already were trying to find the answer on Stack Overflow, and they didn't, because there was no repository, right? There was no solution. You introduced this solution. So what do? You go to Stack Overflow, you try to find those questions of people who were wondering, trying to find an answer, and give them the answer with your repository. To tell them, look, I see that you're asking this. For example, somebody is asking on Stack Overflow 5 years ago, how in Java I can encrypt a file without using any encryption algorithm. I want to do it in a very primitive way. I'm just telling you my own story. And then you develop the repository. You develop a library, a very small library, which actually does that, the encryption, in a very primitive way, which is, for some cases, good enough. For some simple situations where you don't really care about super security of the data, you just need to protect it a little bit. So you make this library, you go to this question, which somebody asked 5 years ago. There are already a number of answers there, because it's a simple question, so people already gave the answers. It's not important. Well, it's important. You read all of these answers, and then you post your answer at the bottom and say, look, I just developed a new open source library. It's my library, it's full disclosure, so I am trying to promote it, but at the same time, it helps you solve your problem. And then you explain how it solves the problem. So don't just point the readers to your README file and say, here's my library, go read how to use it, bye-bye. This kind of answer most probably will be deleted. But make a proper detailed answer, show the use case, show how exactly you can use that library and why it's good, why it's better than other answers, and why it may help the original post, the original problem which was stated in the question. If you do it in a number of questions which you can find on Stack Overflow, you'll get the traffic from there. People will find you. People who are looking for exactly your solution, exactly your library. They will just, from Stack Overflow, immediately jump to your project, use it, and pay you with the star. This is what I was doing for years, and it works for me. Actually, in most cases, I develop open source repositories because I see problems which cannot be solved. And sometimes it's even my question on Stack Overflow. I go to Stack Overflow, I post a question, I ask how to do this and that. People answer me, and I see in the answers that there is any elegant answer. There is no proper library for that. There is no proper framework which can do exactly what I'm asking. What do? I go to GitHub, I develop my own solution. What do I do next? I go back to my question, which I asked on Stack Overflow, and I post an answer there. And I say, thank you everybody who tried to help me, but eventually I created my own response to this question. And here it is. This is how it works. And some people even like that stuff because they see that there was the problem and that the author of the problem introduced an answer. I think it's a perfect way to promote your open source stuff. But pay attention, you have to do it very carefully because Stack Overflow, it's a moderated place. There are moderators. And if you promote your stuff in a very intrusive and very arrogant way, then they may ban your answers and maybe even your account. They may ban. It actually happened to me once, actually last year. They banned my account after 12 years of using Stack Overflow. I never had that problem, but just last year, maybe they got new moderators or something changed. So they came to me and said, you are posting your stuff very frequently. So please don't do it. Don't do it so frequently. And I said them that I understand the philosophy of the community. I understand how it should be done, but I try to always explain that this is, yes, it is my stuff, but it does solve the problem. So what can I do? How else I can? They said, be more careful about disclosing what's going on. So don't pretend that you're just suggesting an answer, not knowing that it's your own answer, that it's your own library. Say it in the message that hey guys, this is my stuff. You should know about that. And now I explain you how to use it, and always try to explain everything you can in the post. They don't like in Stack Overflow if you give a link to your own, for example, blog or to your own account, to your own GitHub account, just redirecting people, readers, from Stack Overflow website to your website. This is not good for the platform because they lose users in this case. Then the whole platform will be fighting against you. Be very careful, but it's a very effective instrument, no matter what. Next one is Telegram groups. There are Telegram groups for Java developers, for Python developers, for JavaScript developers. And if you develop something nice, if you develop something which, again, solves some problem, just go to the moderator of the group, ask that guy, saying that I have open source product. It's not for money. I'm not trying to make anything out of it. I'm just trying to show it to the community. Is it okay if I make a post about this? if I write about this project, explain what it does in a professional way, and make a post. In most cases, they will not be against that. I tried it many times. I never saw any resentment. I never saw any troubles with moderators. Always they say, of course, just do it because it's interesting. It's new content. They need this in their Telegram groups. They need people to talk about new open source products. And you're coming to them as an author. That's interesting. They have a chance to ask questions right there to the author, review your product. They will appreciate that. And you can say in the end of your message that you will appreciate if they give you a few stars, because that will help you to continue growing your repository. Ask them that in a nice way. They will give you what you're looking for. At least my experience tells me that that's a very effective way to promote your code. Next one, Twitter. As we will see in a second, we talked already about Twitter, that there are people on Twitter. Twitter is a very popular, well, now it's not Twitter, now it's called X. So this X platform, but I believe it's going to be renamed back to Twitter. I feel that Elon Musk is thinking about this, but Twitter or X, doesn't matter. It's the place where programmers are active. If you compare all social networks, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, what else do we have? Maybe the VK, but probably that's it, that to my knowledge. So the programmers are on Twitter. Technical people stay mostly there, maybe because of the format of these messages, maybe because of something else. But if you post there, make yourself a Twitter account. When something you release, learn how to tweet, how to use hashtags. It will help. And finally, you may, of course, have your own blog, which is maybe for the next level, maybe not while you're just making one or two open source projects. But eventually, I believe that any technical person, any programmer must have a personal website, a personal web page. Must have something where you represent yourself. You say who you are, you show your links to your repositories, you have your CV, you have your photograph, you have information about yourself. If you think about yourself as a serious software engineer with a career in software engineering, then I strongly recommend you have your own blog. Buy the domain name, create a blog using some static website generator. I suggest you use Jekyll. Let me write it for you. And so-called GitHub pages. Google for Jekyll and Google for GitHub pages. That's a good combination of these two instruments, which will allow you to make your website, to make your blog of yourself in half a day, including everything, including the content generating, including writing the text about who you are, about placing your picture. All together you can generate very fast, and then you will have your own blog. And then on this blog, you can post articles about new products that you make. You make a new open source library, you write a blog post about that. You release a new version, you write a blog post about it. You want to explain to your users how to use your library, you write another blog post, and so on and so forth. In the end, you're going to get a blog with a few dozens of articles which demonstrate to us how you care about the community, how you care about your user base, about your followers, about people who read your stuff and people who use your stuff. That will move you to the next level, definitely. This is how you get stars. There could be other places, there could be other methods, but I don't know them. I know only these 7 and 7 recommendations in the first slide of this lecture. Let's read a few more papers and then we're done. Look at the kind of research which confirms which I just told you. They say that Twitter user meetings and blogs are the most common promotion channel used by the studied projects. They studied a number of projects that happened 5 years ago. This is how these software projects promote themselves. Twitter, blog posts, and user meetings. I'm not sure what is user meetings. There could be some conferences, I believe. This is, okay, maybe this is yet another mechanism of promoting your products. I'm sorry, maybe I forgot about it, but you can put it here. Of course, conferences or user meetings, as they call it. You can, of course, go to a conference, tell people about that product on the conference, and then you also will definitely get some stars. People gonna like your product, some of them, but that will take more efforts, of course, from you. You need to go to the conference, you need to make a presentation, you need to be physically visible there. That's a different story, but also very effective. I did it too for my products, and it did help me to get some stars from the community. Look, they made some analysis of the most popular mechanisms of promoting the projects. Twitter, number one. User meetings, conferences, I believe. Blogs, they write there. Events, well, events or user conferences, I don't know what is the difference. RSS, newsletter. RSS, I think here we can put Reddit and maybe Hacker News. This is what RSS is for. Newsletter, Facebook, Google+. Well, this study is 5 years old. I'm not sure exactly what, well, let's put it this way. It is true what they say, but if you want to know exactly what means every line, you need to read the paper. I show you this mostly for this particular bar. So Twitter is number one. Twitter is how people get audience, how they catch attention of technical people. But I suggest to use other methods as well, because Twitter alone, especially if you don't have a very big account there, is not going to help you much. If you just have a small account with 2-3 followers who are your friends, then making a post about your product is not going to help you much. You need to do other things as well. And my final slide for today, again about tweet. They find that tweets have a statistically significant and practically sizable effect on obtaining new stars, and a small average effect on attracting new contributors. That's interesting. An interesting finding. So they are saying that when you tweet, you're gonna get stars, but you're not gonna get contributors. So people will come, they will give you a star because they enjoy giving stars, and they walk away, which is good by itself, because as we discussed before, the more stars you have, the more popularity you get, the more contributors you get. But these are not the contributors who will come from Twitter. The people from Twitter will just bring you stars. And not only from Twitter, I think we can replace the tweet here with other things as well. We can replace it with Hacker News, with Reddit, with your blog, maybe even with Stack Overflow, and so on and so forth. So all of the instruments which I mentioned before, they will help you to bring traffic to your site, to your GitHub project. The traffic will come, people will come, they will like your project, they will give you stars, but they will walk away. Then, in a few months, the people who really want to use your product, the people who really are ready to contribute to your product, they will come and they will see the number of stars and they will stay with you. So it's like a two-phased process. First, you bring the traffic with star givers. And then the actual users come and they pay attention to the number of stars you got from those first group people. I think that's the dynamic. To my understanding, that's what I feel, being on GitHub for 10 plus years. So that's it. That's all I wanted to tell you in this course. I hope that it was helpful. I hope you will be on GitHub. I hope that in a few years you will get your first 1,000 stars repository, and then it's going to be a new life for you. You will see a different feeling. You will get a different kind of emotion, different kind of fun from software development. The software development and programming will become source of pleasure for you, source of enjoyment. Now it's maybe source of money. Now it's source of income, money. You have to do it. Or maybe you enjoy it, but it's a different enjoyment, different fun. When you have something with 1,000 stars, that's a total different story. You feel that your stuff is actually needed by people. You feel that people not only need what you do, but they like what you do. They appreciate your work. They submit pull requests. They submit questions to you. They criticize your work. They like your work. Some of them will start emailing you, saying thank you. Some of them will ask questions by email as well. Many things will happen, but that's going to be a way more interesting life than before. I think it starts happening after 1,000 stars. When you get 1,000 stars, then your professional life goes through a new trajectory. Thank you very much. What else can I say? That's it. I gave you 8 lectures, 7 practical recommendations, and then the lecture number 8, we discussed how to be popular. And that's it. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.